قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن وأكن من الجاهلين. Yusuf alayhi salam prayed, "My Lord, I would rather be in jail than do what they invite me to. And if you do not turn their cunning away from me, I might yield to them and fall into ignorance." Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in one hadith, "أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء ثم الأمثل فالأمثل." Those that will be tested the most are the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam, and thereafter those that are closer to rank in them. Amongst the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam was one of the Anbiya alayhimus salam who was tested and put into various sorts of difficulties before even being given prophethood. At a very young age, his brothers had left him in a well, after which he had been picked up by a group of travelers who were traveling from the area towards Egypt. He became the treasurer of Egypt, and while he was there, a certain incident transpired between the treasurer or the king of Egypt and his wife at the time. Nonetheless, one of the great lessons that we pick up from this incident between the wife of the king of Egypt and Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam was when she slandered and lied about Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam that he had bad or evil intentions with her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had protected Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, and he was saved from this fitna. In this verse of the Qur'Ānic Kareem, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam makes a very pertinent statement and dua. رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ. O my Rabb, O my Lord, the prison is dearer to me than what these women invite me to do. So, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam is asking for a minor difficulty that he can go through in this world and save himself from a major difficulty and save himself from dishonor in this world and in the hereafter. So he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to avert a great calamity and put him in a smaller calamity. The scholars have written, the ulama have written, that Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, had he asked Allah ta'ala for afiyat at the time, meaning he would have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him goodness and well-being in this world, he would have not have to go to the prison. The dynamics would have changed. However, Allah Ta'ala had all of this planned. Allah Ta'ala knew what he was doing. Therefore, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put him into a smaller difficulty and save him from a greater difficulty. When the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Al-Abbas, came to him and he asked him, "Teach me something that I can make dua for, I can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for." He said, "Salillah al-afiyah." Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for afiyah, well-being in this world, well-being in the hereafter. And a few days later he returns and he asks Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Teach me something that I can ask for now." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ask Allah Ta'ala for afiyat fid dunya wal akhirah." Ask Allah Ta'ala to grant you well-being, goodness, avert all sorts of evil, calamities, trials, stress, tribulations in this world and in the akhirat. So it is of paramount importance that we make dua for afiyah. We make dua for well-being. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from all sorts of evils in this world and in the hereafter. In one hadith it appears Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to also make dua for afiyah. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afiyah wa dawam al-afiyah wa shukra ala al-afiyah. O Allah, grant me afiyah, grant me goodness and well-being. وَدَوَامَ الْعَافِيَةِ. Let this afiyah be perpetual and continuous, and such afiyah that I am grateful for. I praise and thank you for keeping me in goodness and well-being throughout my life. So the ulama have mentioned, and it also comes in the ahadith, that a person should read this dua morning and evening. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-afiyah wa dawam al-afiyah wa shukra ala al-afiyah. So Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save him from the trap of these women who had looked at him, and instead of cutting their fruits, they cut their fingers. The wife of the king at the time, who was known as Zulaykha, she was also accused by these women that she wants the young man that has come or was sold as a slave to the people of Egypt, or to a group of from a group of people to someone in Egypt, and it happened to be the king at the time who purchased Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, and he put him into the palace. So Rabbi Sijnu ahabbu ilayya mimma yad'unani ilayh. Put me in a smaller calamity. I know I'm safe from this big afat and musibat, this big difficulty, this big trial. At the same time, ulama have mentioned that a person should not ask Allah Ta'ala for something that may put him into difficulty. For example, don't ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to grant you lots of patience. Why? Because patience will come with a difficulty. When you have a difficulty, then you will have to make sabr, you'll have to make patience. So the ulama have mentioned we should ask Allah Ta'ala for afiyat, ask Him for afiyat. Don't ask Him that He should keep you steadfast on patience, He should make you a patient person, a tolerant person all the time. Now, if you want to be a tolerant person, if you want to be a patient person, you'll have to go through some sort of difficulty in order for you to have that quality. So the ulama have mentioned that we should ask Allah Ta'ala for afiyat. We should ask Allah Ta'ala to keep us well, and you should ask Allah Ta'ala for goodness. وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنْ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And together with that, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam is acknowledging the fact that, Ya Allah, if you do not save me from this evil, I myself cannot save my desire, I cannot save my heart, I cannot save myself if it's not for you. Therefore, we should also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from all sorts of evils, to keep us under His protection, under His guidance, under His hifazat, under His protection from sinning, from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way whatsoever. Further to this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted his dua. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ فَصَرَفَ عَنْهُ كَيْدَهُنْ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the dua of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. He went into prison, and the treachery that these women had planned, he was saved from that. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most hearing, He is most knowledgeable of what was happening. So therefore, two great lessons to learn. Ask Allah Ta'ala for afiyat, goodness, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from all sorts of sins, and not to give us control of our own selves and our desires, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from us, and whereby we then are in control of our desires totally, in such a manner that we become blind of the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find it to be something of pleasure, we find it to be something of goodness, and we end up backing up and proving that what evil or disobedience we are involved in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fine for us to do.